There we go. Okay, so we're recording now. Okay, so in regards to the midterm, I will be my game plan is pretty simple. So you have the last 48 minutes or so, this lecture going into the weekend, with only 4 homework questions. So the reason that you're only getting 4 homework questions with this lecture is because what I want to do is I want to be able to give you guys I wouldn't necessarily call it a sample midterm, but I'm definitely going to be give you questions that range across, from the beginning of the class all the way till now. So that way it'll be like a good refresher for, the things that you should, make sure that you understand. Now, keep in mind things that things may show up on the midterm that might not be on this, these practice questions that I give to you. So it's really important that you maintain and you stay up to date with all the material that we've done so far. But at the very least, you'll have this for, like sort of a study guide, in a sense. The reason that I hesitate to call it a practice midterm is because I already have the midterm complete. The midterm is about 6 questions. Some questions have multiple parts, but still about 6 questions. This is going to have way more than 6 questions. So I wouldn't call it a sample midterm because it's not going to prepare you for the duration of the test. It's just going to prepare you for the material itself. Okay, so I'm going to be posting that over the weekend as well. So that way into Monday, you'll have the last 4 homework questions, and you'll also have, this quote unquote sample midterm. So that way, you could ask me questions into Monday. And then finally into Wednesday, just as a reminder, I won't be posting a lecture Monday into Wednesday. I'm not going to be posting anything, no new material, no lecture, no homework, nothing Monday into Wednesday. That is, I expect you guys to take Monday into Wednesday to figure out what your questions are. If you have questions on the sample midterm, or if you have questions from literally any homework, any quiz, ranging all the way back to, to the beginning of the class, I expect you guys to, find those questions, figure out what it is that you don't understand or what you want to review again, and we'll go through it all on Wednesday. Okay. I'll also have normal office hours next week. So normal office hours again will be Monday and Wednesday, 4:15 to 5:15. So you can feel free to talk to me then. And then last but not least, we'll have our midterm on Friday. Okay. And the last special little note that I want to make here is that a couple of you guys owe me makeup quizzes. I want to get all makeup quizzes done that were, quizzes for before the midterm. I want to get them done before the midterm. So if you owe me, like a quiz 3 or a quiz 2, and I said that, it was okay, that it was, okay to be made up, I want to get that done, by next week before the midterm. Okay. Otherwise, that's about it for important information. Anybody have any questions on that? Everybody understand what we're doing? What time will the midterm be, and will we take it during class? Yes. So the midterm is just going to be right smack dab at 11 o'clock. You guys get here. I would recommend getting here early because the midterm is probably going to take you the entire class period. So you take it during class. You'll have from 11, and I'll say from 11 to 12. Because I need to give you guys time to scan it, but I will absolutely not accept anything that's later than like 12:05. Okay, so I need things in my inbox no later than 12:05 p.m. But you'll be taking it on Friday, starting at 11, and it'll last you about 50 minutes to an hour. Any other questions on that before we get to the homework? Okay, so given all of that, let's go ahead and get to the homework. So Deborah has asked for 26. Sure, 26. Okay, so you're supposed to find an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point with the given slope, and then sketch the point by finding a second point. Okay, so what are we already given? So again, we're given a point. So the point is 5, -4, right? And the slope is undefined. So the slope is, m is equal to undefined, which tells us some really important information. If the slope is undefined, that can only tell us one very specific thing about the line that we're dealing with. The line that we're dealing with has to be a vertical line. Remember, there's two special cases, right? If the slope is 0, then you have a horizontal line. That means that the line is just staying perfectly flat, right? That means there's no change in y. I'm sorry, there's no change in y, and because there's no change in y, there's no change in the top part of slope. Remember, slope is technically defined as the change in y over the change in x, right? Those are triangles, deltas, whatever the case. Also known as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? So if there's no change in y, then it's 0 up top, right? And we get 0 over the change in x, which we know is 0. But that's for a horizontal line. For a vertical line, we know it's going to be similar. So I'll just write horizontal right there. For a vertical line, we know it's going to be similar, but the difference is that the 0 is going to be on the bottom now, right? Because there's no change in x. So we have change in y over the change in x, where the change in y, yeah, there's things changing in the y-axis, but as far as the x-axis is concerned, there's no movement whatsoever, right? So we would get a 0 over here, and once again, we know that if you have a 0 in your denominator of a fraction, you can't divide by 0, so it breaks, and that's it, right? So we see here that we have a vertical line because the slope is undefined. So if we have a vertical line, we already talked about that vertical lines are always going to be defined by the x, right? Because if the y is constantly changing, the one thing that is not changing is the x. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to real quick just sketch this, right? Because again, part of the direction said that we had to sketch a graph. So we know that, and I'm just going to freehand this, we know that we're going to have some coordinate plane, right? And before we sketch this, let's go back to our point. The point that was given to us was 5, -4, right? Well, if we know that this is a vertical line, we know that the y component will be changing across the line, right? It could be 5, -4, 5, -3, 5, -2, so on and so forth, right? It goes from down to up to down, right? And it goes to infinity and negative infinity in, the directions of up and down because it's changing on the y-axis. But the one thing that's never changing is this 5 here, your x component, which tells us that the vertical line is going to be over here. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's say this is 5 right here, it tells us that our vertical line is, sorry, that was supposed to be right on the 5, but again, I freehanded this. So just pretend that it went right over the, the 5 hash mark there. So our vertical line is going to be as such, and the point that was given to us is going to be somewhere down here, right? The point that was given to us was 5, -4. But notice that, like 5, 2 is still on the line. So we can take whatever points that we need, and technically any point that's in the form of 5, comma, some number will be on that line. Because again, it's crossing the x-axis when x is equal to 5. Hence, we know that we can define this line by the equation x is equal to 5. And that's it. That is the entire problem. It's not, this is like a special case because, again, we have a vertical line. I wanted to throw in 1 or 2 special cases into your homework just so you could see this in action. But the entire idea here is that you found out that you have a vertical line because your slope is undefined. And because you have a vertical line, you know that the only piece that isn't changing, guaranteed on your vertical line, is the x component. And if the x component isn't changing, you can just define the line by the x component, which is x is equal to whatever, it's set to. So in this case, 5. If this were a vertical line passing through the point 3, -4, then you can make your equation x is equal to 3. Because again, it would be passing through 3, and that would just always be the case, right? It's always going to be at, the order pairs would always be 3, comma something, 3, comma 7, 3, comma -12, whatever the case may be. So that's the idea here. Anybody have any questions on this? I know that this one didn't follow the normal process of, finding another point, finding whatever the case may be, right? But again, this is a special case, and that's why I wanted to throw it in here because, vertical lines.
If we had something like this on the midterm or on the quiz, would we have to show all that work? Or since we knew that it was undefined, could we just jump right to x equals 5?
Just tell me that it's undefined, tell me it's a vertical line, and then just say x is equal to 5, and that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so like you don't need to show me like this, for example. This is that I only did this because I wanted to illustrate and I wanted to recap what we did during the video. But yeah, as long as you just said, yeah, m is undefined, so because m is undefined, this is a vertical line, x is equal to 5, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on this? I just want to make sure we all understand what's, going on here. Okay, so I'm going to take it that we're all good with this, and we'll move on here. So 43, sure, let's see. So for the directions for 30 and 43 you were to use whatever the conditions were to find an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So before we even look at whatever the conditions are, let's go ahead and write down slope-intercept form. I just want somebody to help me. Who can tell me what slope-intercept form is? Because we talked about 2 in the video, right? Technically 3, but the third one you'll see over the weekend. So what is the slope-intercept form?
Y equals mx plus b.
Great, thank you. Perfect. So y is equal to mx plus b. And how do you know this is slope-intercept form? Well, if m is your slope, you have your slope, great, and b is your intercept. B is always your y-intercept, right? B is that constant that tells you if we set x is equal to 0, then you would just have y is equal to b, and that tells you that you would have the ordered pair 0b, right? Whatever that number b is, I don't know, because obviously we don't have real numbers plugged in just yet, but you would always be at the ordered pair 0b for your y-intercept, right? So great, this is in the y-intercept form. That's exactly what we wanted. I can't undo. There we go. Okay, I'm trying to undo the circles and whiteboard's fighting me. Okay, so y is equal to mx plus b. We know that our goal is to get it into this form. So that's good to keep in mind. Let's just underline it, leave it there, and we'll come back to it in a second. So what is the 2 pieces of information they gave us? They told us that the x-intercept is equal to -3. So we have x-intercept is -3, and the y-intercept is 4, right? Y-intercept is 4. Okay, so given this, what 2 ordered pairs do we know that we have? For sure, guaranteed. How can we write the x-intercept and the y-intercept as 2 ordered pairs?
0, 4.
Yeah, right? So 0, 4. Thank you, Jack. Because
-3, 0.
Yeah, exactly. -3, 0. And he got that because, again, intercept will tell you that the opposite variable has no component, right? It's set at 0. So for the y-intercept, we know it's 0, 4 because the value of the y-axis is going to be +4, and the value of the x-axis, by definition, should be 0. And then same thing for the x-intercept, right? We know that the x component is then going to be -3, and the y component, by definition of an intercept, should just be 0. So great. So we have 2 ordered pairs, -3, 0, and 0, 4. And when I told you guys that, we define a line by 2 points, this is perfect because now that we have 2 points, we can figure out our slope. Remember, we were missing this m, right? They gave us our y-intercept. The y-intercept was already given to us, and we know then that b is equal to 4. We can just plug that directly in, but we're missing our slope, so we have to find that first. So let's find our slope, and to find our slope, we already just talked about this. Slope is equal to the change in y over the change in x. Okay, so plugging this in, once again, it doesn't matter which point you choose to be x2, y2, and x1, y1, as long as you remain consistent. So I'm just going to make 0, 4 go first. So that means that I'm going to have 4 up top minus 0. And down here, I'm going to have 0, the x component of the y-intercept. So 0 minus a negative 3. And that's going to give us 4 minus 0 is 4. 0 minus a negative 3. Two negatives are going to cancel out, right? We're going to get a positive. So that means we're going to get 0 plus 3. 4 over 3. And that's our slope. And now we have all the necessary information that we need, right? So we know now that m is 4/3. We know our y-intercept is 4. We don't even have to put this into point slope form and, solve it for y, right? We can just throw this directly into slope intercept form because we have the two pieces of information that we need. So we can just say, great, y is equal to 4/3 x, 4/3 again being my slope, plus 4, because 4 is my y-intercept, 4 is my b. And that's it. Any questions on this one? Now, normally, just to restate this, normally what you would have to do is if they gave you any other point other than the y-intercept, for example, or I'm sorry, well, specifically the y-intercept, if they gave you any other point other than the y-intercept, you would have to throw this into point slope form. The reason is, if you don't know the y-intercept, you can't possibly jump straight to this, because you wouldn't know that it would be 4/3 x plus 4. That plus 4 is coming directly from this piece right here, right, which was given to you. If they gave you any other point, you would have to throw it into point slope form. You would then plug in one of your points. It doesn't matter which one, as we talked about in the video. And as long as you do your operations correctly and you solve for y, you will get the exact same thing that we got here, which again is y is equal to 4/3 x plus 4. Okay, so just to reiterate, the point slope form is in the form y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. That's an x. Okay, so if they gave you any other point that wasn't the y-intercept, you would have to plug the points in. And in this case, just to really show this, I want to show that you could plug in the x-intercept, and this will still work. So the x-intercept is -3, 0. So with -3, 0, that means that you would have y minus, well, the y component of -3, 0 is just 0, right? So y minus 0 is equal to 4/3 x minus -3. And let's clean this up a little bit. So y minus 0 is just y. Great, we're already solved for y. Then we have 4/3 x plus 3. And as you can see, when we do all this out, I think it's becoming more and more clear that this is going to work. And we have finally y is equal to, and you distribute the 4/3 to each piece. So you get 4/3 times x, which is 4/3 x, and 4/3 times a positive 3. Well, when you distribute 4/3 times a positive 3, the 3 times the 1/3 in the denominator is just going to cancel. So we're just left with 4/3 x plus 4. And we arrive at the exact same thing that we did before. Okay, so it was really just the point that they gave you this piece of information here that allowed you to jump straight to slope intercept form. Okay. All right. Question 30. Yeah, we can run through that really quickly. We have 5 minutes, so we'll do that. It's going to be the exact same procedure, right? So for 30, we're passing through -5, 1. So I'll write this, -5, 1. And also passing through the point 2, 7. So the idea here, once again, is we want to find an equation in slope-intercept form. Well, to get it in slope-intercept form, we would need the slope and we would need the intercept, right? Well, we don't have the intercept, but we can get the slope. So getting the slope, that's m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we just plug in, right? So I'm going to choose this underlined point to be the point, the components that go first. Again, feel free to choose whichever one, as long as you remain consistent. So for me, that means I'm going to have 7 minus 1 up top. And for the bottom, I'm going to have 2 minus a negative 5. So 2 minus negative 5. 7 minus 1 is 6. 2 minus a negative 5 gives me 2 plus 5, which is just 7, right? So great. Our slope is 6 over 7. Okay? Now what we need to do is, because we do not know the y-intercept, we can't jump directly to that, right? So the same thing that I just did, that I showed you the alternative way of solving the previous question, that's the only way that you could solve this question, because we don't have the y-intercept given to us. So we have to throw it into point slope form first, which is again y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And we can choose either point to plug in. We just have to obviously remain consistent, and we have to plug in 6/7 for our slope. So the point that I'm going to plug in, just because I already chose it for before, I'm going to make 2,7 the point that I plug in. So plugging in 2,7, that means we're going to have y minus 7. 7 is my y component, right, of the point that I'm plugging in. So y minus 7 is equal to 6 over 7 times x minus 2. Okay, so cleaning this up a bit, we have y minus 7 is equal to, and I'm going to distribute the 6/7, or once again, if you don't want to deal with fractions, you can just multiply out the 7 now and then divide by 7 later when you're solving for y. But for the sake of keeping this, fairly linear, I'm just going to distribute the 6/7 and then we'll go from there. So we have 6/7 x minus 2 times 6/7. Once again, we see an integer times a fraction, which means the integer just multiplies against the numerator. So it's just 2 times 6 up top, which gives us 12/7. And we see that to solve for y, I'm going to add 7 to both sides, right? Doesn't matter what set of points you use to plug into the equation. Nope. Does not matter. You'll get the same exact thing. So if you plugged in, instead of 2,7, if you plugged in negative 5,1, you'll get the same exact answer, provided that you do your steps correctly. Okay. And also you could plug in any other point on the line for that matter. So if they gave you a third or a fourth point, that could all be plugged in as well. So solving for y, just to quickly finish this up, we add 7 to both sides. So we get y is equal to 6/7 x minus 12/7 plus 7. Well, I see I have a fraction plus an integer, so that means that I want to change my integer in the form of a fraction. So how do I get 7 to be in terms of sevenths? I multiply top and bottom by 7 over 7, right? Again, that's multiplying by 1. So that means I'm going to have 49 over 7, because 49 over 7, again, just simplifies down to be just a 7. And last but not least, we can combine the fractions now, and we see that we have 6/7 x negative 12 plus 49, because we already know that it's going to be over 7. When we add our fractions together, we just keep the common denominator. So we have negative 12 plus 49, or you can think about it as 49 minus 12, which leaves you with 37. And that's it. So we have arrived at our destination. This is in slope-intercept form, right? We have our slope. We have, in this case, 7/7 number. I can tell you. That's a fraction, or I'm sorry, a calculator will tell you exactly what that is. But yeah, it's in the form that we want, right? Y is equal to mx plus b. Just because we have fractions doesn't mean it's not in that form. Okay. Any questions on this before we go and take our quiz? You all good with this? Again, the procedure is pretty similar to what we did in the last example for the alternative method of solving it, right? So it's that, yeah, we find our slope because we didn't have our slope. That's one of the things that we need for slope-intercept form. And because we don't have the intercept, we just plug it into point slope and solve for y. And solving for y, we see that we end up getting our intercept anyway. Okay, guys, so it is 11:26. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. You guys should have access to your quiz. Go ahead and get started on it, and I wish you best of luck. If you guys have any questions, I'll stick around here. I'm also going to stop the recording now. So stopping the recording.